All right. Thanks again, everyone, for being here. I'm Jenny with Partners for Affordable Housing and also FM Civic, who's kind of helping do the coalition work behind Partners for Affordable Housing. So I will hand it over to Cassie for our presentation today.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, let me just get my screen going. So thanks everyone for having me today. I'm Cassie Lacy. I work um, with the City of Bend. I'm a senior management analyst in the city manager's office, and I lead the city's climate work. Cyrus Mooney from our economic development department is also here with me, and Katie Brooks as well from the city. So I was asked to come share the work that the city is doing related to developing electrification policy in Bend. So that's what I'm going to share today. And to start, I just have a little bit of background, um, some background and context on why we're working on electrification and how this kind of fits into the city's overall priorities and work plans. So the city has had climate action goals since 2016. The goals that were adopted back then were to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 40% by 2030 and 70% by 2050. In response to setting those goals, the city created a community climate action plan, or we call it our CCAP, which is a strategic plan to achieve those greenhouse gas emission reduction goals. It was initially adopted in 2019, and then we just went through an update process. Um, and the council adopted that update in April of this year. So that's the guiding document that we work within. And then since it was initially adopted in 2019, we have been working to implement the CCAP. The implementation of the CCAP has also been included in the council goals every biennium since 2021, which is the first time it had had been officially adopted. And so we work out of those strategic goals that we have that are longstanding, but really every biennium for the last several, the council has continued to prioritize and reinforce for staff that they want us to focus, among the things that we focus on at the city, to focus on trying to achieve our climate goals. And then just some additional kind of context is that we work closely with the city's Environment and Climate Committee. They are an advisory body to the City Council that provides policy recommendations and support for implementing the CCAP. We call them the ECC. They also provide input on other citywide policies and programs from the lens of environmental stewardship. So if some of you are familiar with the city's Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, this is its counterpart focused on environmental stewardship. So that committee has played a really key role in advancing this work forward. Which I'll talk about in a moment, but I will refer to them on the electrification policy as well. And then also just some additional background info is that to inform our climate action work, we complete greenhouse gas emissions inventories. It helps us understand where greenhouse gas emissions in Bend come from. So this is a summary graph of our most recent one completed with 2021 data. It shows us that the building sector, commercial, residential, and industrial combined contributes the greatest amount of greenhouse gas emissions in our community. And so that's the main reason that addressing emissions in buildings is a huge priority for us and one of the big drivers of our electrification work. Transportation is the other biggest area of opportunity for emissions reductions, and that kind of split is pretty common for communities. So then I just have a few slides I want to go through at a very high level to give an overview of our CCAP. This is again for more context so that so that everyone can understand that our electrification policy work is coinciding with work in a lot of different areas. It alone is not intended to achieve our climate goals. We recognize that achieving those goals is really dependent on working on a variety of strategies in tandem to effectively reduce emissions. So I just wanted to give a high-level snapshot on what that whole picture of our climate plan is so you can see how electrification fits in. So the plan is divided into 4 sectors that roughly align with our emission sources: energy supply, energy and buildings, transportation, and materials and waste. And in the energy supply category, which is sort of the most relevant for the electrification work, this category includes different ways that we are working to increase the amount of renewable power serving our energy grid and serving the Bend community. So it includes things like working on advocacy at the state level and then also encouraging distributed renewable energy in our community. And one of the most critical pieces of this part of the CCAP as it relates to our electrification policy is that we're simultaneously working to ensure that the electricity provided to our community is 100% renewable. The investor-owned utilities are required in the state of Oregon to provide 100% renewable. The electric utilities are required to provide 100% renewable electricity by 2040. So that is a key assumption that underpins the dramatic reductions that we can potentially see from transitioning a lot of buildings to using electricity as a primary energy source. So we really see those going hand in hand. The other strategy relevant to our electrification work within the CCAP is the second one that says reduce emissions associated with reliance on and usage of natural gas and other fossil fuels. So this is the part of the CCAP that our electrification fee work fits within, again, complemented by that 100% renewable electricity strategy. And this is the part that's kind of giving us the direction to go down this pathway. And then I'll go more quickly through the other sectors, but the energy and building sector is closely related to the energy supply sector since the two of them together address emissions from buildings. This one includes more policies, programs, and other kinds of initiatives that encourage energy efficiency upgrades in buildings. It's a lot of things like education and incentive programs. And then we have a transportation category, which is focused on both reducing vehicle miles traveled but also encouraging electric vehicles for the vehicle traffic that is unavoidable. And so that includes VMT Their VMT reduction strategies are things that the city already focuses on, such as investing in bike and ped infrastructure, trying to support transit, land use policy that encourages density, and that sort of thing. And then the last sector is materials and waste. I will not go too much into this one because it's less relevant for today's discussion, but it's mainly educational and outreach efforts focused on reducing consumption and preventing waste. There are strategies focused on improving recovery of construction and demolition waste, and also some exploration around low carbon concrete. So those are the two that might be of most interest to those focused on housing in Bend, but those two are not areas that we have really done substantive work in yet, but they are kind of on the agenda of things that we might work on within the climate portfolio. So now I will move on. I'll shift gears into our electrification policy work, which is our big policy initiative this year, and the reason that I'm chatting with you today. So this initiative arose during the council goal setting process for the previous biennium than the one that we're in today. So it was really started in fiscal year 23-25. The council gave direction to us at that time that they wanted us to explore developing policies to reduce natural gas use. And that was triggered partially by our climate work, but it also was coming up even outside of our climate action plan. It was coming to them frequently from the community around that time. So a little over a year ago, we launched a process to better understand what policy options and levers we have at our disposal to try to reduce natural gas consumption in Bend. We structured this as a two-phase process where we wanted to first understand just sort of the menu of options available to us at a high level, and then we would get direction from the council about which of those options they would seriously consider pursuing and wanted us to do a deeper dive on. So we started with some broad research to understand what kind of policies and programs other communities were executing or actively working on developing. We were definitely most interested in trying to find, successful examples from other communities, but this is a very sort of up and coming policy area for cities. So most of the examples out there are still developing concepts. And so we're kind of in a space where a lot of it is somewhat new. And then as we did that research, we also had to filter out what was theoretically possible to replicate in Oregon. So there are some pathways that cities are exploring, like just using their building code and changing their building code to kind of restrict natural gas in new development. And that pathway is not available to us in Oregon since we don't set the building code. So at the staff level, we were doing research and we were just filtering out those kinds of policies. And then we did some stakeholder interviews during that process, including with the Central Oregon Builders Association, the Chamber, and each of our 3 energy utilities, as well as some environmental stakeholders. And then the council asked that Environment and Climate Committee to review those options that the staff had researched and to take that and create a recommendation for the council about which policy or couple of policies to pursue to encourage electrification in Bend. So the ECC delivered a recommendation in December to the council, and their recommendation included they had a priority. Their priority was for the city to pursue policies that would just pretty much outright restrict or very strongly disincentivize natural gas in new residential construction, with the justification that it's easiest and cheapest to electrify when buildings are planned and built that way initially, as opposed to retrofitting. So they really saw, and this is true across the way other cities are approaching it, is that there's a real opportunity for new construction because it's not nearly as expensive as retrofitting an existing building later. So their top recommendation was that the city pursue either a ban of natural gas in the right of way or to create air quality regulations that restrict nitrogen oxide emissions. So both of those options are ones that we have looked into. They're relatively untested, especially in the context of a city government enacting a policy. In some cases, the air quality regulations, for example, are they exist, but they exist at in air quality districts in California and that sort of thing. So it's a little bit different of a context. And then their second recommendation, sort of their backup option, was that the city enact a fee on natural gas appliances in new construction. So sort of that strong disincentive. So the fee has some, although limited precedent in other cities. There are 2 cities that have similar kinds of policies on the books right now. The committee felt that the fee would have potentially less climate impact than the other 2 regulatory approaches would have, but it does have more flexibility for the development community, as it still allows gas, but it requires an additional cost. And then the other part of the ECC's recommendation was that they strongly encouraged the development of an incentive and outreach program for existing buildings, recognizing that the potential climate impact from existing buildings is very significant, since those buildings are less efficient to begin with, since they're built with older energy codes, and that it is much more expensive to retrofit those buildings. And so in order to encourage people to do that, we really need to provide some serious help to make that happen. So the council heard this recommendation in December. They decided that they wanted some additional feedback from the Bend Economic Development Advisory Board and the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee. Those are 2 other city council advisory committees on the topic. So we held a meeting with all 3 committees in February of this year. At that time, we got feedback on a staff proposal that differs a little bit from the ECC's original proposal, which I'll get to in a minute. But then the most recent step in the process was that we had a discussion with the council in April. It was a follow-up from that recommendation they got from the ECC, and then we had the February joint meeting, and we were, asking them at that time how they wanted to move forward. So at that meeting, the council provided us with the direction to explore and pursue the fee on natural gas appliances in new construction, and to use the revenue for an incentive program to further incentivize electrification. So that is the direction that we are working from now. And we have, based on that direction, this is what our current work plan is to, encourage electrification, kind of enact the direction from the council. This is essentially what the staff recommended. It's aligned with the staff recommendation that we provided to the Joint Committee in February. So the first bucket of work is sort of the low-hanging fruit of just expanding education and outreach about electrification to encourage just more voluntary shifting to using electricity as a primary power source. This is something that's already underway through our kind of routine outreach channels. And then we have something planned called an Energy Navigator program that we're going to look at launching next year. And then the second second bucket of work is this bigger policy lift, which is to develop a disincentive and incentive package to encourage electrification. Based on the council direction in April, we're pursuing the fee on natural gas appliances as the disincentive, which is really the foundation of this effort. And then we'll use that to try to build an incentive program using the proceeds of that fee. I'll go a little bit more into that process in a moment. And then the third bucket of work is that staff will continue monitoring the pathways for restricting gas, such as the right-of-way ban and the NOx policy. We do not anticipate going down one of those journeys anytime in the immediate future, but several counselors have continued to express interest and continue to explore those and track those. So we're definitely still tracking them. So as for the next steps in developing that fee and incentive program, we are planning on using the next 9 months or so. We will be hiring a consultant who has expertise in sort of that kind of fee development, and also convening a stakeholder group that will provide critical input into the fee and the incentive program. The plan is that we will again use a joint committee of AHAC, BDAB, and the ECC to create a temporary group who will be responsible for developing and recommending the fee and the incentive program to the council. And then in addition to that will be the voting member body. And then we anticipate having the 3 utilities, Cascade Natural Gas, Pacific Power, and Central Electric Co-op serve as ex officio members, and because we know we really need them to just have continuing connection to the process so that they can be providing us and the advisory committee with good data, good information, and just the real life perspective on the implications of any policy. And then we also envision having additional formal input opportunities from the building community at key points in time to get the really valuable perspective that we know we'll need from builders and developers at more targeted moments in the process where we need specific input, and we would like to do it that way because we think it will be the most efficient way of using people's time on a more targeted question. So I expect that to look something like a roundtable for builders when we're putting together the incentive program to get feedback on what the incentive program should look like, what should the target be, what should the dollar amounts be, and that kind of thing. So we used roundtable models for our transportation utility fee. If anyone here was a part of those, I anticipate it to be somewhat similar. And then the scope of work for that stakeholder group will, it'll be fundamentally to help define that fee, what factors need to be included. We have models. The city of Ashland, Oregon has done this, and then the city of Burlington, Vermont has done this. They have different calculations for how they set that fee. And so we're going to be looking at those, using our consultant to try to figure out what factors make sense in Bend for us to set that fee appropriately so that we can achieve the council goals, but we can also hopefully honor and support other council priorities as well, and adapt it to Bend's unique development context. And then also we will use that advisory body to determine and develop the idea around the incentive program as well. Our proposal to council is that we focus this fee on new residential development and leave out for now commercial, commercial and industrial. As trying to introduce commercial, it really does introduce a whole new set of considerations, and even the data is a little bit different on the back end of what we have currently in the community. So that is direction we still need to confirm with council, but I do believe we will be focusing on new residential. And then these are the key dates to carry out that work plan. So the first one coming up is that we're going to go to council with a brief update on August 20th. That's what we're going to share findings with them of the research we've done so far on the few existing programs that exist. So we'll go more into the examples from Ashland and Burlington, confirm their support with the approach and the direction that I've outlined. And then we are planning on going back to council on October 22nd. For that one, we'll have had our consultant on board, and we will be able to present council with some additional analysis to help inform the overall goals and approach to the fee. And we'll use that time to get additional shaping from the council to really define the scope for that advisory committee and what they want, what recommendation they're looking for from that committee. And then we will launch that public committee process more formally after that October work session. So we anticipate that getting underway in November and continuing through the spring. And then I feel like these processes always unfold a little bit differently than we expect them to, but I think we will first really focus on defining the fee, and that'll kind of be the primary focus through the winter. And then in the spring, we would, in theory, have projections about potential revenue from that fee, like resources we have to work with for an incentive program. And then we kind of switch gears to the incentive. So that is what we're working on at the city right now. And this is the slide's just a timeline of that same information in a different format. So I'm happy to answer any questions for the group. Morgan?
Hey, Cassie, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Awesome. Hi, let's see. I was wondering thank you for this timeline. I was wondering where, given the city's, given what council's goals of housing production, and then the state ONA numbers around how many homes, the state is requiring Bend to build annually here. Where in this timeline is there an assessment, on the cost or time impact of any of these energy policies?
Yeah, that's a good question. That assessment will come as part of the setting of the fee because we need that information even to figure out the appropriate fee amount and the appropriate incentive amount, also to understand the impacts of it. And the reason we haven't done that up front is in some of the digging that I've done into how we set that calculation is the question around how much does it cost, how much additional cost does this add? There are just different ways you can slice and dice that a little bit. And so I believe we will get better information that better informs our policy if we need a little bit more direction from the council about ultimately what do they want this the policy to accomplish, what are their primary goals, and then we'll do it as part of that. So that might have been sort of a convoluted answer, but that is on our radar. Definitely the cost part of it. And the time part of it, we can include as a consideration as well. It's not one that's really been brought up necessarily for new construction. I have not heard anecdotally that it takes more time to do like a single family home, at least electric, but it could be different when you get to, I don't know that for sure. I just haven't heard that anecdotally, so it hasn't been on my radar. But that could be part of the considerations too.
Thank you. So generally, we're looking at early 26 for that
Yeah.
analysis.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ryan had put a question in the chat.
Oh, yeah. I I'm struggling with the whole Zoom, trying to
I
see
know
all the
there's
questions
a lot going on.
so.
He just asked, where do gas fire pits and those types of secondary or aesthetic type fixtures fit into this?
Yeah, that will be something that we will want to figure out. So the Ashland fee charges for an indoor gas fireplace. And the way that the Ashland one works is that each different gas appliance has an emissions factor associated with it. And so gas fireplaces is one of them, and there's a correlating fee, but it's different. So like a gas furnace has the highest fee because that's the highest climate impact, where a fireplace, the emissions factor that goes into that is smaller since they're typically used less. Ashland exempt any outdoor uses of gas. So if it was an outdoor gas fireplace, presumably that would not be applicable in Ashland. And those are questions that we will have to figure out for ourselves here if we want to take that same approach or if we want to do it differently.
It sounds like the takeaway I'm getting is I should be, well, rather we should all be pushing and suggesting our clients stay away from gas kind of in general.
Yeah, I mean, the goal of the city from the lens of the climate action program is to really just reduce natural gas use in our community as much as possible. So especially those opportunities where there are good electric alternatives, you know, that is what the city is wanting to encourage people to use.
Yeah, the last two holdouts that I always get from clients is they want a gas fireplace so that they can flip a switch for Christmas and a gas range for cooking.
Yeah, definitely. I've heard that anecdotally as well. And that's one of the benefits of the fee, as opposed to like something like the right-of-way ban would be like, there's no gas in the right-of-way, you know, so for new areas, it'd be like no gas use would be possible. The fee is much more flexible because it allows people to, you know, pick the uses that matter to them and then pay a fee for that. And then that fee is correlated to the climate impact of that thing. So if they want a fireplace and it's used once at Christmas, that does have a much lower, at least in the Ashland model, that has a much lower correlating fee. So it's, you know, I think a lot of times people will pay the fee and get that gas fireplace because it's a relatively small additional cost. But for heating, you know, in a lot of cases, people are less particular about heating as long as their house feels warm when they want it to feel warm and feels cool when they want it to feel cool. And so if there are electric options that allow them to do that in their home, then, you know, they can do the electric option for that and avoid the fee payment for that. Again, that's all in the Ashland model. So how ours will actually play out will be different, but yeah.
All right, any other questions? We're right at 4:30 now. All right, well, if you guys do, feel free to reach out to me. I can connect you with Cassie. I can also, like I said, I'll provide this presentation in the next couple weeks after we have our third one. But really appreciate the time. So
Yeah, thank you everyone. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
thank you so much. All right, you guys have a good rest of the afternoon.
Thank you all.